Good Wednesday morning, everyone. I'm Schuyler, Callihan, and joining me today on today's episode is former West Virginia running back. Nope, scratch that. I'm going with legendary West Virginia running back Eugene Napoleon. I should never say former because once you're a Mountaineer, you're always a Mountaineer, right?
Absolutely.
So, got Gene on the show with me today. We're going to talk some football, a little bit about maybe if West Virginia's turned the corner or not. And this is something I've been kind of debating over the last couple of days. I wanted to record something about this, but I had to get your take on this because you, just like me, have been very critical of Neal Brown over the years. But last year we kind of, tipped our hat to him. Now
Absolutely.
I feel like this is a critical year for Neal Brown, maybe even more critical than 2024. Why? Because this is kind of the prove it year. This last year was the let's save the job here first, right? Let's make sure we're safe. Let's make sure we're not going anywhere. This year's the year where you put your foot down and say, we have arrived. We officially have turned the corner. Or as Neal likes to say, we are climbing, right? So, Gene, I ask you, do you believe West Virginia is officially climbing, or was 2023 an anomaly?
No. Listen, first off, let me take a step back. To be critical of someone can somehow be taken disingenuously as somebody is saying, well, we're critical because we don't like said person. That is not the case with Coach Brown.
Not personal.
Wasn't that no, it's not personal. Wasn't that we were critical of him personally? We were actually critical of the direction of the program and just certain mistakes that were made from a coach's perspective.
Yep.
So let me clear that up because I think sometimes people hear that and they really get a misconception. We are on pace and progressing the way I believe the program should be progressing at this particular point based on last year's results. Okay. Had for some reason, if we would have tanked last year, the last 4 games, then I think this would be a totally different discussion. No,
Oh, yeah.
I think we're on track. I had said this a few weeks ago, and I actually put it in on one of my posts. We're on track and trending to win 10 football games this year. I said it. I said it and I wrote it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, we're trending that way. I think Coach Brown and that staff has everything in place to do exactly that. I think the schedule leans that way. I think the talent leans that way. I think the progression of what he's built offensively, defensively, and getting better in special teams leads that way. Now, here's the aha moment, right? Anything could happen. That's the reason why we play the games.
Yeah.
We stay healthy, things click for us, things fall into place for us. We have the talent to win 10 or more games. Howsoever, if it doesn't, then we'll be in the same boat as every other university playing this great old game of college football. Mid-season, we'll be scratching our heads talking about if Coach Brown should be the head coach at WVU anymore. So it goes either way. I'm saying we're trending in the right direction because of what I've seen and because of what seems to what's happening right now. Transfer portal success, retaining the right players.
Very key.
Very key. So looking at that from that perspective, I think we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to make excuses or go back and say, I was always a fan of Neal all along. I was a fan of Neal all along. The person, the man he is, the way he carries himself. I loved the person Neal Brown from the very beginning, and I've never wavered on that. The
Absolutely.
results, this is what this is, a results-oriented business. And when you don't have the results, you're going to be open to criticism. And he understood that. He understood that they fell short in 22.
Right.
But when you go back and look at it, hindsight is always 2020, right? And I'm not trying to make excuses here. This is just the straight out facts. He comes in 2019 with a very, very bare cupboard. I don't care what anybody says. He had Colton McKivitz on that offensive line and nobody else. He had a quarterback situation where he had Austin Kendall, Jack Allison. I mean, come on. Listen to this here. You had Zach Frazier coming in 2020 as a true freshman starting on your offensive line. You had COVID that year as well. COVID shortened season. You weren't able to get out and recruit. And yes, this is the same for everybody else, but not for everybody. In the fact that Neal was very fresh into his job. Everybody else, for the most part, had already been in place. And then you also
Mhm.
kick in the transfer portal in 21, where a lot of these big time programs are coming in and plucking guys like Tyke Smith, Dre Sean Miller, Akeem Messidor, Daryl Porter,
Right.
list goes on and on and on. 22, that was kind of the year where it started to really kind of feel like, okay, the results really aren't there, because that was the first true year, I think, where everything was kind of fair or even game. But
Right.
Country Roads Trust, the NIL foundation, really wasn't rolling yet. That didn't happen till
Right.
last year. So once
Right.
we saw
Yes.
what this is starting to look like with the fully funded NIL, transfer portal has kind of simmered down a little bit in regards to guys leaving the program. I see so much momentum and a snowball effect heading in the right direction for West Virginia. And you look at everything that they come back or that they bring back from last year. That's the key. They bring
That is
so much back. You lose Zach Frazier, you lose Doug Nestor. That's big losses. But when you're bringing back a Garrett Green and all those other pieces, how can they not be trending in the right direction? Now, the one thing I will say, Gene, is you got to prove it to me twice kind of person, right? I don't fall in for the one bad year means the coach sucks, the player sucks, and I'm the same
no.
way when it's good. If you prove it to me twice, now I'm really going to believe. Do I believe more than I did a year ago? Absolutely. But I still think there's a little bit in me that's like, I've got to see it again.
Well, here's the thing. It's personal growth, right?
Yeah.
It's personal growth in every profession. I don't care if it's water polo. It's personal growth. If you are good one year, that should not be the snapshot that you're going to be good the following season. Like you just said, trending the other way. If you're bad one season, that's not a snapshot or you're indicative to be bad the next season. But I think we both agree with everything that we have coming back, with how they looked the last 4 games, 3 to 4 games of the season, plus the bowl game. You got to be excited for what we're going to look like in 2024. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm excited about that, and anything can happen. But I tell you what, I'm probably more excited now than what I was last season at this time, and I was pretty excited last season at this time.
You were
If you
probably the
agree,
most optimistic. You are genuinely optimistic, but I couldn't even believe that you were optimistic last year. I mean,
yeah.
it
Well,
was
it
dark
was,
times.
it was, but I'm looking at when you have a quarterback that's been in your system for 3 to 4 years
You better
and
be
has
able to
grown,
play.
right, and has grown because that's where it starts. Let's be clear. You got to have a CEO. You got to have a leader, right? That offensive line, well, I think they'll band together. I mean, like you said, we lost some big horses up front now. We lost two good ones, two good ones. So I think with what we would have gained during the offseason, and I really believe that Coach Brown and that staff finally figured out how they want to manage this football team. And that's key. That's key. It took a minute, but I really think they figured it out.
Now, the last thing I want to ask you about this is because it kind of hits home with you a little bit. Now, maybe a little bit on different spectrums, but in '88, right? You guys
Right.
weren't being picked to go to the national championship. You sure as hell weren't getting picked to go undefeated. There was
No.
maybe one particular person that did predict that person, which we all know, but um, 88, you kind of took everybody by surprise. Now, West Virginia last year took a lot of people by surprise. Again, not on that same spectrum, but they were picked to
Right.
finish dead last. They end up with 9 wins, finished fourth in the Big 12.
Hmm?
This year, expectations have risen. Now there's some talk that, hey, this could be a team that contends. How did you guys handle that the following season in '89, that offseason heading into that '89 year?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. It was rough, and I'm gonna tell you why it was rough because like you said, when you're coming off a national championship appearance, the expectations are through the roof.
Right.
And having Major back, to me, the most electrifying quarterback in college football at that time, there was no reason why we went in saying we're going to win. Yeah, we might have another shot at this thing. We really went in believing that. The difference between both teams, honestly, the leadership that we had collectively going into the '88 season, I think was on a different level than going into our 89 campaign, which was my senior year. We had decent leadership, but my point was, I don't think we was as depth-wise as deep as we were in 88.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that has a lot to do with it because, again, that 88 team, when you look at it from top to bottom, we were 3 deep at every position.
Right.
Every position. Some positions 4. So when you lose that, it does change a little bit of the camaraderie because you now know it's a little bit different team. It's a little bit different roster, even with the same lofty expectations. And I think that's what happened to and then I got hurt early on. I got hurt in camp in August. I cracked the bone in my ankle in August. That actually was a hairline fracture that just got progressively worse throughout the season. So I hobbled through my senior year, which stunk, but I didn't have the same burst as I did in 88 and 87. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and that's why I'm saying now, I hope that does not happen to this team where you get hit with the injury bug early in camp and it's kind of hard to come back from that.
Yeah. And again, like it's completely different things, like coming off a national championship loss versus being 9-4. Like I get it. People are probably saying, why even comparing the two? But it's just the fact of you surprised a bunch of people. And last year you were in that underdog role and you had everyone counting you out. And now this year there's people giving you praise. So how do you handle that? That's what I'm trying to say here. I think if they handle that well, this team will have similar success as they did this past season.
I personally think that's going to come down to coaching. That's going to come down to really balancing out your locker room always. Coach Nealon did a great job of that in 88 and 89. He really did. He was a master of keeping everybody calm.
Even keel.
Yeah, don't get too hype on reading your press clippings. He was a mastermind at that. So you didn't do anything yet. You know, we were 6-7-0, and we still hadn't done anything yet. So I kind of like that 88 squad. So I think if Coach Brown and that staff is similar in their temperament and they're consistent with that message and it resonates throughout the entire locker room, they'll be fine. That's my humble opinion. I think they'll be fine. Plus, I think they're hungry. I think they want to prove that last year wasn't a fluke and they can win. They won 9. I think they're looking at we can win 10 or 11 this year.
Yeah, and I love Jaquay Hubbard in his press conference. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but he was talking about having that motivation. Where do you find that when you're not going to be picked 14th? And he said, like, last year we wanted to go to the Big 12 championship. We fell short. We didn't do that. That may not have been everybody else's expectation, but that was ours. We didn't get there. And he said, even if you're picking us 3rd, 4th, or 5th, we're still taking that as a slight. So that's what I like, that mentality. And I feel like that resonates throughout that whole locker room. I don't think that's just Jaquay Hubbard speaking. I think that's him speaking for pretty much the entire team. So I think this team's going to be in great shape mentally. Again, I just think personally it is, like you said, going to come down to the overall health because this is the deepest that Neal Brown has had on both sides of the ball pretty much at virtually every spot. But you still got to have your main guys healthy. If you have your main guys healthy, you're going to have a chance. So that's gonna do it for us here today on Between the Ears. That is Eugene, Napoleon. I'm Schuyler, Callihan. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page at Mountaineers Now. Give us a thumbs up and go over to X to follow us at that same handle. We'll have Gene back on next week. We'll talk some more about the Mountaineers. And we'll, at some point this offseason, we'll talk about what the disappointing side of a season could look like, what a dream season could look like. We'll get into all that stuff here over the course of the offseason. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch back with you tomorrow morning. Take care.